Welcome to the Deep Dive into Success podcast. Jason and Rebecca are ready to fuel your next move. Every insight here is a spark. Ignite change. Seize the moment. Take action today and shape your tomorrow. Check us out by listening. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe to receive notifications when new content is available.
All right, let's dive right in. Today we're talking about something really critical in the sales process. The ideal criteria question, the ICQ. Some sources even call it the definitive sales bridge.
Yeah, it's absolutely pivotal. Think of it as the hinge point. You've just got commitment to move forward, that soft transition is done, but before you jump into showing your solution, this is where the ICQ comes in.
Okay, so it's strategic and the goal. What are we trying to achieve here?
Simple, really. You want the prospect to define their perfect solution criteria that ideally your solution already meets. So when you present, it's just confirmation, not you trying to, push something on them.
Ah, I see. So it's less of a pitch and more like ticking their boxes.
Exactly. You're essentially pre-qualifying the solution itself in their mind. It's a powerful psychological step.
Okay, let's unpack that psychology. Why does getting them to define criteria work so well? Is it about value?
It is, partly. By stating criteria before knowing the price or seeing all the features, they inherently assign a higher value to anything that meets those self-defined needs. But it's also about consistency.
Consistency, like cognitive dissonance.
Sort of. Once someone states out loud, my perfect solution absolutely must have X and Y, their brain wants to stay consistent with that statement. It's harder for them to back away from it later.
So if they say, for instance, we absolutely need 24/7 support and we have it,
then that point is basically off the table as a future objection. They can't logically argue against a requirement they established as non-negotiable. It just doesn't track.
Okay, that makes sense. It shifts the dynamic. You're not arguing features, you're confirming you meet their stated needs, like a consultant.
Precisely. Think of a tailor. They don't give you a price up front. First, they ask what fabric, what style, how should it fit. Those criteria you give them determine the value, not the other way around.
Right. But here's where I can see things going sideways. What happens when the criteria they give you are just mushy? It needs to be easy to use, or the classic, it needs to be affordable. That feels useless.
Ah, yes. The vague criteria trap. That's probably the single biggest failure point in traditional sales approaches right here. You cannot accept vague words like good, easy, or affordable.
Why not? What's the harm?
Because those words are pure objection fuel later on. They're subjective. What you think is easy, they might find complex. What they think is affordable might be totally different from your pricing. It leads to misunderstandings and lost deals. This is what we call the passive listening barrier.
Okay, so you hear easy to use and alarm bells should ring.
Immediately. Your job is to deploy what we call bridge questions. You need to probe, gently but firmly, to turn that vague wish into something specific, measurable, and high value.
Give me an example. How do you bridge from easy to use?
You might ask something like, okay, easy to use is definitely important. Can you tell me what that looks like in practice for your team? For example, how quickly would you need a new user to be fully operational?
Ah, okay. So you're guiding them towards a number or a specific outcome.
Exactly. You might land on something like, okay, so the first critical criterion is that initial user training must take less than, say, 4 hours. Now that's something concrete.
But wait a second. Aren't you just swapping one potential problem for another? Now they can object if your training takes 5 hours instead of 4.
That's a really sharp point, and it highlights the difference. Yes, they could object, but the objection is now based on a measurable standard they agreed was critical. Easy is debatable forever. Less than 4 hours is a clear yes or no. You're acting as a consultant, clarifying their needs into specifics.
Okay, I think I get it. You guide them to define criteria that ideally you can meet well. Then what? You just jump into the demo.
Almost. There's one final lock-in step. The final validation question. Immediately after they've defined those 2 or 3 specific measurable criteria, you confirm.
How does that sound?
Something like, okay, so just to confirm I've got this right, if I can show you a solution that ensures new user training takes less than 4 hours and it provides criterion 2, would that absolutely check all the critical boxes you need to see to move forward?
Wow, okay. That's direct. And if they say yes?
You've essentially gotten their permission to close, assuming you can demonstrate you meet those exact criteria.
Yeah.
The presentation becomes a formality, a confirmation.
This sounds powerful. So why isn't everyone doing this perfectly all the time? What are the big mistakes people make?
Well, the sources point to a couple of major barriers. The first is what they call the ICQ fatigue barrier. It's internal.
Fatigue, like the salesperson gets tired of asking questions.
Kind of. It's more the fear that you've asked too much, that the prospect is getting impatient. So you feel this pressure to just rush ahead, show the product, Skipping this final critical question feels easier in the moment.
But it leaves the door open for those hidden objections later.
Exactly. You have to fight that internal urge. Remember, asking detailed questions isn't annoying. It's a sign of respect. It shows you want to genuinely solve their specific problem, not just pitch a generic solution.
Okay, that's one barrier. What's the other big one?
The criterion neglect barrier. This one happens during the presentation. You've done all the hard work. You've extracted these perfect measurable criteria.
And then you just pull up your standard PowerPoint deck and forget all about them.
Bingo. You revert to talking about features and benefits in a generic way, instead of explicitly linking everything back to their stated criteria. You said you needed training under 4 hours. Let me show you exactly how our onboarding achieves that. Your second criterion was criterion 2. Here's how we deliver on that promise.
So the presentation itself needs to be structured around the criteria they gave you.
Absolutely. If you don't, that whole diagnostic, consultative atmosphere you built just collapses. You suddenly sound like every other vendor talking about their product, not like someone solving their specific pre-agreed problems.
It really comes back to making them persuade themselves, doesn't it? They design the solution brief, and you just confirm you have the blueprint.
That's the essence of it. The ICQ flips the script entirely. It's self-persuasion at its finest.
So let's leave our listeners with something to think about.
Right. If the real goal here isn't just closing one deal, but building that solid long-term relationship where objections barely even come up because you're so aligned, what internal resistance, that fatigue barrier we talked about, do you need to overcome personally to make sure you consistently use this incredibly powerful question?
Thanks for diving deep with us on this episode of the Deep Dive into Thriving Successfully. We hope you found a quick hack to take action on today. If this episode moved the needle for you, please take 1 second to hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. It helps us reach more people who want to start thriving. Our content is 100% based on listener requests. We want to cover the topics you struggle with. Drop your episode suggestions in the comments or send us an email directly at deepdive@lfeg.info. And the best way you can help us is to share this episode with a friend or colleague you care about. Let's build a thriving community together. Until the next dive, keep crushing your goals.